Did you forget who I am?
These are the top 25 badass movie scenes from each year this century.
好，说放脸就放脸。
Don't let the title fool you, the entry actually does show what it states, but from the perspective of people whose minds don't let their intrusive thoughts take over. Yes, we're kicking off this video with a badass boss girl moment from 25 years ago, meaning female empowerment has always existed in cinema. Don't forget classics like Alien and Terminator 2. Anyway, the focus here is the fight between Zhen Yu and Yu Shu Lian, both of whom showcase some seriously impressive skills. It's so good that it actually took its spot from movies like Mission Impossible 2, and deservedly so. Seriously, I didn't do it to tick any diversity quotas. Also, comment below what other popular movie has Zhen Yu's actress Zhang Zi starred in. Sean Bean has made it a habit to die whenever he shows his face. It's held true even when he was thought to be the main character of Game of Thrones. However, seeing him go out with a bang against Lurtz and the Uruk-hai scouts was definitely badass. Of course, the main honour goes to Aragorn for taking down Lurtz in an epic battle, but the emotional depth of this sequence is what drives it forward over competitors like Rush Hour 2 and Spy Kids. Also, I know it was different in the books, but in the movies, notice how Isildur was shot with 3 arrows in the back after giving in completely to the power of the ring, while Boromir got shot with 3 in the front after he faced his demons in the end. Yep, this series is such a masterpiece on so many levels.
It is over. My captain. My king.
Physics hasn't really been the strong suit of action films, even today, but when you look at how Jason Bourne was able to survive falling down at least 6 flights of stairs without a single broken nose, you'd be pushed to let it pass simply because of how badass it looks. There's the obvious bit of confrontation as Matt Damon tries his best to become the American James Bond, but what stands out the most is how bro dropped down the stairs and also managed to land a perfect headshot in the process. Yeah, if you believe it's fake, then you're just being a hater. There's girl power, there's strong female character, there's genuine badass, and then there's the bride from the Kill Bill series. Uma Thurman was already a famous name by this time, thanks once again to Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, but this moment pretty much made a global name due to the popularity of the film. My focus though has got to be the scene against the crazy 88, because taking down 88 skilled fighters with weapons is hella crazy in its own right. Not a lot of words here uttered until the bride decided to mock that little kid who found himself in the wrong line of work. But that works perfectly fine because of the ridiculous stunts on display.
Go home to your mother!
You have a train to catch.
You know, it's very difficult for me to place a scene like this at 21. That's only because of its year of release, so I guess I'll allow it. The train scene from Spider-Man 2 is most definitely deserving of several spots higher because it's become something of a peak moment in the Raimi trilogy. It not only gave us a brilliant display of Spidey's powers and fortitude, but it also presented him as a vulnerable being who was protected by those he'd vowed to keep safe. Yes, I know that didn't really do much to stop Doc Ock, but it's the thought that matters, isn't it? When it comes to actually stopping the train, I'm sure you already know how great it is from the videos where I've mentioned it already, so let's just say Peter Parker's powers and Tobey Maguire's expression saved the day here. After all, it was good enough to edge out a brilliant battle from Achilles in Troy. People are raging about the Godzilla MonsterVerse rendition of Kong, but let's not forget the OG King Kong, who was able to impress one and all with his great strength and even greater tenacity. The fight against the three V-Rexes was an exceptional display from Kong, because we also need to consider the fact that he was keeping a very vulnerable Naomi Watts from harm in the palm of his hand. In conclusion, Bro kept the damsel in distress safe and took down three of the most dangerous monsters you could have ever found in this movie. As far as motivation is concerned, the resilience showcased by Kong in order to save an innocent life is further proof of his badassery. I would have done the same thing for Naomi Watts, but for completely different reasons.
Submission. Now that's a bit of a problem.
Do I even need to justify why this one's the official rep for 2006? 300 is essentially an entire movie that works on the premise of being badass. Never in my life have I seen so many ripped dudes at the same time, but my focus isn't on the battles, but rather on what instigated the main one. This is, of course, when our man Leonidas literally kills the messenger with a kick and a legendary line that still resonates with audiences around 19 years since its release. Gerard Butler totally played his part to the T, because nobody's been able to scream with that kind of aura apart from him. And yeah, that kick was definitely personal, but I'd do the same thing if my wife and people were getting ridiculed by a stranger.
This is Sparta!
Let's go. Come on. Sam, come on.
2007 was loaded with action-packed films. We got the Bourne Ultimatum, the OG Transformers film, Spider-Man 3, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, and Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. However, the entry that takes the spot here is from I Am Legend, when Sam jumps in to save Robert, thus establishing himself as the goodest boy to have ever lived. The zombie dogs were definitely creepy AF, so for Sam to jump in at the right time to save his human was the highest display of loyalty and sacrifice. He puts up a great fight too, allowing Robert to successfully defeat the monsters and live another day. Did Sam survive though? You know what? I don't have the heart to go through this again. Let's just say he's in a much better place now.
Now there's a Batman.
You're not going to find directors like Christopher Nolan so easily in the future. That man has single-handedly made sure to keep the word cinema alive with his brilliant filmmaking and complex plots, especially in a world that's only focused on making money from products. The Dark Knight serves as a great example of this, because it's a director taking a commercially popular IP and adding cinematic depth to it in order to strike the perfect balance between money and art. Now, the scene where Batman takes down an entire truck with his Batpod was impressive for sure, but mostly badass because this was the equivalent of bringing a knife not to a gunfight, but rather a bazooka fight. Even the Joker himself couldn't understand what was going on until the very last moment, and by that time, it was too late. I won't include what happens after this though, because that kind of amps up the Joker more than Bruce Wayne.
He missed!
Bashes the brains in with a baseball bat, what he does. And Werner, I'm gonna ask you one last goddamn time. If you still respectfully refuse, I'm calling the bear at you.
There are lots of people in the world who will tell you that violence isn't the answer. And on the other side, you'll find people like Quentin Tarantino who only know one solution. Violence has pretty much become the iconic director's primary style. Take the example of Sergeant Donnie Donowitz, aka the Bear Jew. His introduction to the film was super badass, especially once you realise that he's played by Eli Roth, a director who actually manages to make violence more graphic than Tarantino. The moment Donnie showed up once Aldo summoned him, we just knew this guy wasn't going to spare his target. The build-up to the eventual smashing of the Nazi head was also nicely presented, with contrasting shots of the victim and the culprit, serving as a nod to Donnie pulling off a role reversal when it comes to Jews and Nazis. I did praise him in the previous entry, and here he is again with yet another brilliant display. Christopher Nolan has unanimously become the most celebrated and wanted director of the modern era. It's quite easy to see why that's the case. His work has proven his class time and time again, with 2010's Inception being a great representative for my argument. The spinning hallway fight is here today mostly due to Nolan's insistence on getting the scene shot without CGI. Yes, what we're witnessing here is the peak of practical effects. What's even more shocking is the fact that Nolan actually used the same mechanics from one of his idols, Stanley Kubrick. The methods he'd used for 2001: A Space Odyssey all the way back in 1968 came to life almost 50 years later to give us this greatly memorable scene. Of course, what sells it is the fact that Arthur was able to fight his opponent despite the difficulties in place. And yes, let's not forget that this is a high-stakes encounter with Yusuf pushing the envelope when it comes to his driving skills so that he can keep his team safe from harm.
Did you see that?
When it comes to Asian films and martial arts, we as viewers are often spoiled for choice. There's a plethora of brilliance to choose from, and 2011's The Raid happens to be the key pick from 2011. Now, if it were up to me, then I'd probably put the entire movie on this list, but I have to be fair to the films. So I'll go with the battle between Rama and the Machete Gang. Yeah. I know you might be thinking why I didn't choose the battle with Mad Dog, but to be honest, most of that sequence is Rama and his brother getting dominated by one villain. You've got to be bossing around your opponents if you want to look badass, which is what Rama achieves here when he takes down the Machete Gang after a lengthy battle. Bro didn't want to fight at first, so we first thought that he wouldn't have been able to win, which was a fair assumption. However, after witnessing such a realistic battle sequence, it became clear to us that Rama was just trying to avoid causing extreme violence to those unsuspecting goons.
Now might be a really good time for you to get angry.
That's my secret, Captain. I'm always angry.
We're all excited for Season 3 of One Punch Man to drop in 2025, so in honour of Saitama's deadly achievements, let's take a look at a scene with the Hulk that kind of emulates his feats. With all the chaos that was happening during the Battle of New York, it was important to kick off the counter-attack in style, and that's exactly what Bruce Banner did with his Hulk transformation. It's a literal case of a blink and you'll miss it situation because the transition was instant and the punch that followed just screamed dominance in every possible language. Yes, we know very well how strong and powerful the Hulk is as a character, but nothing can really prepare you for feats as impressive as this one, especially because of how the MCU criminally underpowered the angry green giant moving forward. Anyway, that's not my place to complain, but what I can say for sure is that the Hulk gave us a totally badass moment. Honourable mentions include Skyfall and this movie again, but this time with the Hulk smashing Loki like a puny god. However, that became a meme for the internet, so it's more of a humorous scene than a badass one.
And I will not be bullied by
Yep, monster battles have definitely become a thing on the TV region, but that isn't the only reason this scene from Pacific Rim manages to top 2013 in terms of badassery. Compared to moments like the ones from Man of Steel or Elysium, this one just felt too grand to ignore. Gypsy Danger also found itself in a high-stakes situation as it was the only Jaeger left which could take on kaijus like Otachi and Leatherback. And that's where the second point comes in. He takes on two freaking kaijus that are category 4. It really had to unleash all its moves to be able to come out the victor, and the audience managed to enjoy its weapons as well as its physicality. One of the main reasons why the battles from Pacific Rim look and feel so real is because of great special effects and also because of the movement timing. Due to the sizes of these opponents, the slow movements are believable because there's no way such massive beings are going to casually move like the Flash for the sake of entertainment. The concept of massive is taken quite literally, and yes, it's no surprise that the fight against Otachi was a lot better than the fight against Leatherback. But hey, since the both of them are taken down one after the other, why not enjoy the whole thing as one sequence?
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
It was either this one or the Free Bird Church scene from Kingsman, but based on overall impact and meme status, I just had to hand over bragging rights to the elevator scene from Captain America: The Winter Soldier. This was badass from a personal perspective for Steve Rogers too, because up until this point, he was just shown to be a dude who's a little stronger than a bodybuilder. His overall fight skills weren't really that much on display, considering he wasn't much use when he fought Loki against the Avengers, and for the most part, he was using weapons or handing out orders. In the elevator scene though, he managed to take down a whole bunch of Hydra operatives without really having to use his full strength. Bro literally gave all those dudes a clear warning, showcasing how confident he was in his own abilities. Imagine if there was just a normal dude, unrelated to any of this, just chilling. He would have been very confused by that statement. Or how about if someone was waiting for the elevator to come to their floor? They surely must have thought it was a faulty piece. Well, the joints and muscles on those Hydra agents were definitely left that way after Cap was done with them.
It kind of feels personal.
There wasn't a lot of competition for this one, apart from maybe Age of Ultron, so the sandstorm scene from Mad Max Fury Road makes it quite easily as the top spot from 2015. This has got to be one of my favourite memories of watching a film in the theatre. You have an entire 30 or 40 minute first act of pure adrenaline pumping action, spectacle and loud noises, coupled with a great background score.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
But what stands out the most in the whole film is the sandstorm scene, which is a winner based on the visuals alone. I mean, seriously, this is probably one of the best examples of how you should do visual effects in the modern era of filmmaking. I love how Max and Nux actually had to take a moment to admire this terrifying yet incredible moment unfolding right before their eyes. Also, kudos to the director George Miller, who did a great job to follow this up with a brief lull, because it becomes the first time we as the audience have a moment of silence in the film. Yeah, stuff's still happening, but you can hear the entire theatre take a collective sigh of relief, shifting in their seats, completely blown away by what they've just watched. Now that's the kind of impact this scene leaves on your mind. Honestly, this moment could have topped this video even if I wasn't placing the entries as per year of release, so it's a no-brainer for it to become 2016's official representative. Let's face it, the Star Wars franchise is dead and has simply become some kind of factory producing products for the sake of God knows whose enjoyment. The artistic side of this franchise that drew in millions of fans from all over the world back in the 70s and 80s has long gone. Having said that though, the return of Darth Vader in Rogue One was actually what all the longtime fans were begging to see. The sequence was so deadly and at the same time delightful to watch. I mean, you've got the world's most beloved villain showing up and reminding us all why he's the MVP when it comes to badass Star Wars characters. The usage of his lightsaber and the power of the Force together was a great choice. The look of fear that he commanded expanded well beyond the screen to real life as well, because this was the moment when the audience genuinely feared that he was gonna turn it around. Luckily, everything was kept in place, ensuring the original trilogy's timeline remained the same.
You ugly mess. Did you forget who I am?
There was a great Thor entry I wanted to include here, but then I saw Optimus Prime taking down Infernicus like an absolute boss and went like, nah, there's only one true winner here. The leader of the Autobots was already a household name ever since most of us were little kids, and the live-action versions of him further extended his fan base, although I do feel they could do a lot better in terms of the actual movies. Having said that, there's nothing that could top Optimus Prime riding a freaking Robo-Dragon and then taking down Infernicus the way he did. It was like a double beatdown because he defeated his opponent's merged form in one strike and then all his mini versions using a single strike again. The act in itself sent shivers down my spine, but what really did it for me was when he asked, "Did you forget who I am?" Can you really tell me now that anything else from 2017 would have topped this? Also, I don't know about you, but this seems to have become a trend in every Transformers movie of late when it comes to battle scenes.
I am Optimus Prime.
The previous entry may have excluded him, but the God of Thunder gets his limelight here. Avengers Infinity War had several memorable moments, but when I have to consider something badass, there's nothing that tops Thor's epic and legendary Wakanda entrance.
Bring me Thanos!
Yes, there were some interesting blockbusters from 2018 like the Jurassic World sequel and the Meg, but nothing they offered was as exceptional as this entrance, and yes, not only is it a high-impact moment, but it also acts as redemption for Thor after his humiliating loss to Thanos right at the beginning of the movie. His journey since then has been about vengeance, and all the sacrifices he pulled to get Stormbreaker finally come full circle when he got his Thunder Axe and wreaked havoc in Wakanda. His rage and anger can be seen right as he lands that god-level smash into the ground. But honestly speaking, everything about this moment is lit. I mean, I've crowned the top spot to it in several of my previous videos, so I don't see how this could be any different. It would have been the perfect fairy tale ending for the God of Thunder if he actually went for the head of Thanos, but the producers felt they still had well over $2 billion to make in the sequel.
You should have gone for the head.
Avengers!
Assemble.
Okay, so these are back-to-back entries for the MCU, but such was the dominance of the franchise during this era, eh? You could probably stack up as many films as you want from this year, but nothing will ever get close to the goosebumps millions of people felt all over the world when they saw this moment. The scene is actually around half an hour long, considering everything, but the moment when Captain America finally says, "Avengers, assemble," was the exact same moment that MCU lovers had been waiting for ever since the first Iron Man movie. It was easily the most badass and most impactful sequence from 2019, but even a thermonuclear Godzilla destroying King Ghidorah and being accepted as the official king of the monsters wasn't good enough to top this. And why should it? We've got the entire culmination of a universe we've been following for over a decade all in one specific scene. We got to witness one of the most ambitious and successful final battles in the history of cinema. And most importantly, we got to enjoy the undoing of everything that made us cry after Infinity War. Honestly, the emotional impact alone was enough to place this as the top contender from 2019.
I am Iron Man.
2020 didn't have too much to offer in terms of action movies, apart from maybe a few like Bad Boys 3 or Bloodshot, but it also gave us Extraction, which had a brilliant one-shot scene. The moment kind of helped Chris Hemsworth break out of his MCU shackles as he became known worldwide as someone who wasn't Thor. Extraction isn't a cinematic masterpiece that will make film bros sweat with excitement, but it is a solid action flick that does exactly what it's supposed to do.
Kid, you trust me?
No.
Good.
No!
Entertain. As a matter of fact, this whole sequence made me think that Chris Hemsworth could be suited to play the role of Captain Price in the Modern Warfare universe if they actually decide to make a good adaptation of it. I know I'm covering this one-shot scene in particular, but even as a whole, Extraction has given us some of the most exemplary action scenes in recent memory. Cover is taken, bullet counts matter, body armor actually does something, and the choreography is still sublimely coordinated. It's movies like this that started to give actual movie lovers hope that the entertainment industry still has redeeming qualities. Let me give you an example of that from this very scene. There's a pretty cool detail of the officer grabbing the pistol slide, which causes an incomplete feed. After realizing the gun hasn't been fully cycled, he clears the weapon with one hand. Very impressive choreography.
What are you still doing here, old man?
I'm gonna you up.
If Bob Odenkirk's transition from Saul Goodman of Breaking Bad to Hutch from Nobodies to be considered, we can say that you either die a lawyer or live long enough to see yourself become a badass government assassin. There's nothing rather shocking and scary about a man who's able to maintain his composure even while beating down a whole gang of brats with the utmost skill and savagery. The bus scene always stands out as the main moment from the entire film because of how it communicates Hutch's personality to us. We know this is a man who is fairly experienced in the art of killing, but even so, he calculates his every move and prioritizes completing his objectives first before any kind of unnecessary damage. Acts like using the straw to act as a windpipe for Teddy showed how Hutch wasn't mindlessly beating down his opponent in an already high-energy scene. Of course, Teddy did lose his life afterwards, but that's not the point I'm trying to make here. With no excessive use of shaky cam and showcasing the protagonist struggling during the fight as well, this really felt like a realistic depiction of how such a fight would go down between similarly skilled people.
They think I'm hiding in the shadows.
Taking the top spot from 2022 is a very welcome rendition of The Batman. Seeing the Dark Knight play detective for most part of this film truly felt like a callback to his origins and why he became such a beloved name in the first place. Robert Pattinson finally managed to put his Twilight days behind him because even though he's done some great films since, like Good Time and The Lighthouse, he needed a global hit to redo his public image, which happened with The Batman. The thrashing of the Skull Gang comes right after the epic monologue about Bruce Wayne being the shadows, so the effect it leaves on the audience has a much higher impact. Batman emerging from the shadows to save the innocent victim from that Skull Gang was almost surreal in a way, as if a vampire just showed up, which reminds me actually, I need to go and watch the new Nosferatu movie. If you have seen it, let me know in the comments if you liked it. Anyway, back to this. What's really badass about this particular moment is that even though Batman's outnumbered, he still doesn't strike first. He waits for his opponents to swing at him so that he can counter and make it look even better. Bro really gave the first guy that Arkham beatdown. It totally felt personal on so many levels. It's like Batman will make sure not to kill you, but he'll ensure that you're only left with 1 HP.
I'm vengeance.
2023 gave us some awesome movies like Oppenheimer and the final Guardians of the Galaxy installment. When it comes to being badass, I'm sure fans of the TV region would already know there's no one close to the Baba Yaga. John Wick 4 gave us a pretty emotional send-off in the end, but not before showing us all kinds of violence and bloodshed. One such sequence came in the form of the Dragon Breath scene where John Wick wasn't just taking on his enemies with a top shot POV, but also using literal fire bullets to take them down. Everything about the coordination and execution of the sequence works like a charm, especially the decision to shoot it from the top, which gave the viewers a unique perspective of how action scenes can look. Yes, as I've done in the previous times I've mentioned this scene, I will once again shout out the dude who got burned and ran into the next room just to get burned again. I mean, that's the literal definition of saying you can never escape your fate. On a serious note though, the cinematographer Dan Lawston pulled off a stellar job. Once again, I know these entries are being placed by year of release, but this scene would have easily found its way into the top 20 regardless of criteria. Yes, it's been an eventful list, and we're now on the final year of 2024, which did have some superb moments. Take the final battle of Godzilla Kong, or the epic showdowns between Deadpool and Wolverine as examples. However, when it comes to being badass, I don't think there's much to compare when a person rides one of the biggest sandworms of the entire film series. Paul Atreides spent the entirety of the first Dune film kind of discovering himself and stuff, but the sequel was where he truly blossomed as a man worth loving and respecting. Seeing him execute the plan to ride the sandworm was badass AF, and the reaction from Stilgar was pretty much of the audience when they first saw this scene. Yeah, that dude's the greatest hype man I've ever seen, and the immortalization of his expression as a meme also validates my point. The hard cut from Paul riding the worm to the ancient engravings depicting him doing just that is amazing. It perfectly encapsulates how with every step and victory, he's walking further into the jaws of his prophecy. Man, I'm so glad I watched this in the cinema because you can't really replicate that experience at home unless you've got your own private theatre. Yeah, this is exactly what Martin Scorsese would call absolute cinema. Hope you liked the video. Please subscribe to the TV Region, and here's another video I know you're going to enjoy.